Hello, everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by the wonderful Brooke Destra. Brooke, a tough weekend for the Flyers. No Travis Konecny for 2 games because of his upper body injury, and 2 losses to Metropolitan Division teams. A 2-1 loss to the Rangers and a 7-6 loss to the Penguins.
Jesus.
Brooke, looking at those 2 games and just kind of the chaos of the weekend, what was your biggest takeaway from them?
This this was a very stressful weekend for me.
Yeah.
Mainly because they should have won on Saturday against the Rangers.
Yeah.
They outplayed New York. They rightfully deserved 2 points. That was a frustrating loss, but it was a loss that you were like, okay, you know, they're playing with some of the top, like they're competing and they're playing well against a top team in the league. That's great. And then you come in against Pittsburgh and you're like, all right, here we go. It's the second half of the weekend back to back. They're going to have tired guys on the ice. It's still a game that you should hopefully win against Pittsburgh. I'm more frustrated about the loss against the Penguins than I am against the Rangers, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do, and we'll get into goaltending in a bit, but you score 6 goals in a game, you should win that game. I think it's plain and simple that way. And I think aside from the chaos of goaltending and, you know, how unreliable Cal Peterson really was against Pittsburgh, the Flyers played a solid game. So I don't know. It's a really weird weekend of takeaways because you have a really great moral loss against New York and a really, really crappy loss. I don't even know a better word for it against Pittsburgh. So I don't know. I don't like the fact that they didn't get a single point against 2 Metropolitan teams, but you know, we move on. Get ready for Tampa Bay on Tuesday.
It was an odd weekend, just given you really think there's a chance they could get blown out on Saturday against the first place Rangers, a team they've struggled with, a team that was red hot and they're without Konecny, and they were more than competitive. And then Pittsburgh, you're thinking this is the game they really need. They want to kind of bury the Penguins a little bit, and they give up 7 goals. They score 6, as you mentioned, without their all-star leading scorer. You think that's a game they want to win, should have won. That's a tough one to evaluate. And absolutely, Brooke, I think that's one that probably frustrates the head coach more than the one on Saturday.
Sure. I mean, I watched Saturday's game, and I kept thinking to myself throughout the whole time, I'm like, this is the best hockey game I've watched all season. Yep. It was so competitive on both sides of the ice. And it was just like, it just felt like such a huge playoff atmosphere, genuinely. Like you had said at Wells Fargo, it was very 50-50 crowd-wise, but the energy was there. The game, like the productivity, it was there. It was a great game.
Yeah, tons of Rangers fans, but that's to be expected. I mean, it's a very doable trip. Rangers fans, I think, plan for those games, and they have a great team. Flyers, I thought, had a lot of fans there too. I thought it was definitely half, maybe even 60-40 Flyers fans. Of course, Rangers fans, when they're in another team's building, they get loud, especially when they jump out the leads.
I mean, who are we to talk? The Flyers do the same thing,
right?
So it's fine.
But you're right; it made it for a great atmosphere, and I thought the Flyers fed off of it. I mean, they put 40 shots on Igor Shesterkin. It was a tough loss. New York did what they do, and they got timely goals. They got great goaltending, but
the Flyers did that without Konecny.
Yeah, that's what was impressive.
I think that's the biggest takeaway from that. You put Konecny in that lineup, I genuinely think the Flyers come away with a win.
Yeah,
I do. And then luckily for Flyers, they had the return of Tyson Forrester, who made huge impact the past 2 games. He had 2 goals in Pittsburgh. He had 1 against New York. And, you know, maybe that was kind of a wake-up call for him, being like, I need to come in and step up immediately. So that's hugely beneficial for the Flyers. But yeah, it was a really interesting weekend. Like, I don't really know. I'm very indifferent right now because I was thrilled about how they played against New York. And then again, it wasn't a bad game. It was, if anything, Sunday's game was just the most annoying game I've watched all season. You had two opposite sides of the scale. You have the best game of the season on Saturday, and then the most annoying one. I'm putting that up there with like the loss to the Sharks when the Sharks didn't have a win and the Flyers lost to them. I'm like, oh my God, you got to get a point against Pittsburgh. It was just agonizing. So I really thought that somehow that was going to go into overtime the way that the game has gone, trailing 2-goal deficits twice. The Flyers come back. That's what they do. That's their story the whole season. But whew, it was just a weird weekend of games, Jordan Hall.
It was.
Weird weekend.
It was, Brooke. And as close as those games were, it just felt like a lost weekend in my eyes. I mean, a lost weekend in the sense that two Metropolitan Division teams that you don't get a point against either, despite the competitiveness of the games. And you lose Travis Konecny for a couple of games. And his injuries day to day, it's looking like it's not long term. The Flyers even called it minor. But still, to have your all-star and your leading scorer, this guy that we've called the engine and the heartbeat of the team, to be hurt and miss these pivotal games, also, without a doubt, put a damper on the weekend. But Brooke, I think a big topic of debate right now is how the Flyers use their goalies this weekend. Samuel Ersson played Saturday. They went to the backup Cal Peterson on Sunday. Perhaps some people felt Sunday's game was more important, that they should have went with Ersson that game, Peterson on Saturday. How did you feel about the Flyers and how they deployed their goalies?
You're playing the better team. You're going to play your better goalie. Yeah. I feel like it's as simple as that. I couldn't even believe that was really a debate going into it. Like, yes, there's the whole conversation of, well, nobody's really going to catch the Rangers at this point. So the game against Pittsburgh is the more important one. Let's prioritize that. But I think that doing that almost goes against everything that this team has been working for this season, where they're not going to concede. They're not going to wave the white flag and be like, okay, like let's try and win against Pittsburgh and just, see what happens Saturday against New York. I mean, can you imagine after the outcome of Sunday's game, if you had Peterson playing against the Rangers? I mean, it could have been 10 goals at that rate. Like a lot of the goals that Peterson allowed were really soft, fluky goals that he really should have stopped. He really should have at the end of the day. And I can't even imagine if the roles were reversed. I mean, there was even a point where people were talking about after the second period in Pittsburgh, well, you got to believe they're going to send Ersson out there for the third period. No, no, he just played less than 24 hours ago, and they have a game Tuesday night against another hard-hitting Atlantic Division team. So with Tampa Bay, that was the right move. That was the right lineup of goalies. I just, it's sometimes you have guys that can steal games, and Ersson's stolen a couple games for the Flyers. They've unfortunately lost a game because of a goalie on Sunday, but it happens. I don't know.
Yeah, no. My initial thought, I was thinking about it on Friday at practice, thinking, how are they going to use their goalies this weekend? And my initial thought was, I wanted Peterson to go Saturday, and I thought Ersson goes Sunday. I did view Sunday's game as a bigger one, but then I came around to the thought of, I was okay with how they did it. Saturday's a big game. I know they can't catch the Rangers, but it's without a doubt one of those measuring stick games that fans are going to be in the building for, and they want to see a competitive effort. And the Rangers have worked the Flyers recently over the last 3 years. They've come into their building with their fans, and they've embarrassed them a couple of times. I thought that was an important game just for the psyche of the team, and also really for the fans, to try to show the fans that they can play with the Rangers. They're going to be competitive with this team. I think you go with your best goalie there. It's an important game, just the optics of it. Go with your best goalie. And then you react Sunday. And reacting Sunday is going to your backup, Cal Peterson. So I didn't have a problem with it, Brooke. But I think another topic of discussion right now is, do the Flyers try to trade for a goalie? Brooke, I'm against it. In Peterson's defense, that was one bad start. He's made 2 starts at the NHL level in 100+ days. That was his first bad start in a while. It happens. I mean, listen, the guy has not played a lot. 2 starts in 100+ days. I think he's going to show some rust in the second half of a back-to-back against a Penguins team that looked pretty good too. So I'm not saying Peterson's the best goalie ever, and I'm not saying there's a little bit of concern there. There should be some concern, but it was one start, and I don't think the Flyers are going to be overreacting just yet, thinking they got to all of a sudden go out and buy a goaltender
No.
by trading away some assets.
Yeah.
I don't think they're there yet.
My question for you is, do you see them still riding with Peterson after this, or do you see them calling up Felix Sandstrom? Because I felt like that was a huge topic of discussion after last night's game as well.
Yeah.
Where I feel like a lot of people have some short-term memory. They're like pull up Sandstrom and see what he can do. He has not had the best track record at the NHL level.
Yeah.
So do you think it's worth making that adjustment if they don't trade for a goalie at the deadline? I am also on the same page. I don't see them moving for a goaltender at this point in the season, this early in the rebuild. It's not worth giving up any kind of assets. However, do you see them trying to, much like how they've been doing, juggling some of the younger forwards, do you see them doing that with the goaltender and giving Sandstrom a call up?
I think that's way more of a valid point, Brooke, of debating Sandstrom Peterson. Because if you listen to Danny Briere, he said we're not trading assets for a run.
Mm-hmm.
And going out to get a backup goalie is supplementing one run. It's it's not doing anything more than, hey, we need a backup to spell Ersson for some games. I think they're going to ride it out. But with Sandstrom, I think that could be a topic of discussion if Peterson continues to struggle. They're going to need him. They have 15 games in March. It's a really difficult schedule. It's a busy schedule. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to use Peterson. I think if he continues to struggle, maybe to the magnitude of giving up 7 goals like he did against Pittsburgh, and I'm with you, Brooke, he did not play well. He was not sharp. He allowed some soft ones. They kept fighting back. He needed to make a save to allow them to come back, and he just couldn't make one. But I do feel for him that he hasn't played a lot, and I think that goes into the struggles. So if he continues to struggle, Brooke, absolutely, I think Sandstrom perhaps could get a shot. But I think right now they're comfortable giving Peterson some more starts and doing what Tortorella said, giving Ersson the lion's share of the games. Sure. Celebrity cook Steve Martirano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martirano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations for Martirano's Prime on Open Table. Brooke, before we get into our next topic, how do you feel about Sandstrom potentially being a backup, or are you okay with Peterson right now?
I mean, I wish I could just pass the question. I don't think either one is an ideal situation. But again, this is also a scenario that nobody was really expecting at this point. So I think the Flyers are just kind of making do with what they have and, rolling with Ersson for as much as they can and then throwing Peterson in here, like here and there. I've said it many times. I don't feel comfortable with Peterson in net, and I don't feel comfortable with Sandstrom in net because those are games that you're like, okay, it's not an automatic loss. Obviously, I think Peterson had a great game against Seattle. But at the same time, every night Ersson's going out and giving you the opportunity to win a game. Mm-hmm. And I feel like everybody in front of whether it's Sandstrom or Peterson is going to have to do that much more to try and secure a win. So I'm just afraid that would cause some sort of burnout, especially if they're trying to make some sort of push into, late April into May with the possibility of the playoffs. I don't feel that great about either of them.
That's fair. I think
it's
And and if the Flyers are going to even think about trading for a backup, if they were to do that without trying to give up, reliable or not reliable, I should say, valuable assets, I mean, I'm not sure they're going to get much better than Cal Peterson or Felix Sandstrom. Like, they're just not. Unless you're going to have to give something up to get a better goalie. And I think Peterson deserves a couple more starts to see if he can be better. I thought he was good against the Kraken. I thought he beat the Kings earlier in the season in November. Thought that was an impressive win. So I think he's got some experience and they're willing to go back to him and see how things go over the next week or so here.
Yeah.
But Brooke, with the trade deadline getting closer and closer, the Flyers saw potential development on their back end in that Sunday loss. Jamie Drysdale left in the second period after taking a big hit. He did not return. It looked like an upper body issue, Brooke, maybe something to his left shoulder or arm area. As we all know, he missed the majority of the 2021-22 season. He missed the majority of last season. when he had a torn labrum in his left shoulder. So definitely some concern there. We don't know the extent of the injury yet. There's been no update. We don't know how severe it is or if he's going to miss any time or maybe extended time. But does that injury potentially, Brooke, if he's going to miss time, change how the Flyers view the trade deadline?
No.
Okay.
I think that anything that you're not going to keep Walker for 25 games or however many up until the deadline, just because Drysdale may or may not be out for a substantial amount of time. Drysdale is a part of the future. I don't think Walker necessarily is. I still think you shop him, and it doesn't change the overall picture. And I think that so many of the conversations that we're having from this past weekend kind of play into the overall storyline of the Flyers this year, where they're not changing the main focus, like not to quote Jalen Hurts, but keeping the main thing. You're building for a team to compete year in and year out. That is not going to change just because you may be missing Drysdale. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't have a good feeling about the Drysdale injury.
Yeah. Didn't look great.
It was a big hit. The minute he got off, he ran off the ice down the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he knew that something was up. And obviously this is speculation. We haven't heard anything right now.
Yeah. But
there's a lot of concern. And that was the number one red flag when Philly acquired him from Anaheim, was his past with injuries. So it'll be really interesting to see. And, he might be a day-to-day. That is a best case scenario. But regardless of the Drysdale situation, I don't think it changes the overall look for how the Flyers are going to work at the deadline. I still think they're going to try and move Walker. Yeah, you got to move them. You're not going to be stagnant at the deadline. You're not.
I think it absolutely makes them thinner defensively, especially for Stelanen's injury. We don't know the extent of that, but it's looking more and more like it's long-term.
Mm-hmm.
So if Drysdale's to miss time too, suddenly they have 6 healthy defensemen. And if they're to move Walker, they don't have enough defensemen. But I do think they could make a call up Brooke at Lehigh and get a serviceable guy that can come up. Without a doubt, it will be a loss if they were to trade Walker and then not have Drysdale or Ristolainen either. Suddenly, a position that looked like you had a surplus, you're now getting pretty thin.
Mm-hmm.
But if anything, Brooke, I think it maybe gives them more reason to re-sign Nick Seeler and look for an extension there. Maybe it gives them more reason to just keep Stahl. I'm not sure where Stahl's value is right now. He just hasn't played enough, and he is older. So maybe you keep those two, and I'm with you. I think you still need to look to cash in on Sean Walker. This all goes back to not trying to just make decisions for one run. They can't do that for one run. Walker would be a free agent in the offseason. He very much could sign elsewhere, and then you get nothing for him just to have him for one run. Right. So,
and you have to. I really respect that, because I feel like you could be very nearsighted, or no, it's the opposite when you're looking at things closer. It's farsighted. It's the opposite, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the Flyers are farsighted, though it sounds incorrect. Or no,
yeah, they are farsighted.
They're nearsighted, looking far away. That is a bad analogy.
Yes.
Anyway,
no, it's all good.
I respect the Flyers.
We can edit that.
I like it. Keep it in. I like that the Flyers, even though there has been so much hype around this team, I mean, you have NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman saying the importance of the NHL needs the Flyers to be a good, strong, productive NHL team. And this is the kind of season where it's okay, the Flyers are back on the map. They're back on the radar. So I, commend the front office for being okay, cool. They're in discussions. They're a hot topic right now with the league. That's great. We know we can be better. And we're focusing on that long-term for the future, as opposed to being you know what, let's just go all in. Let's just see what happens. There's no expectations. Let's blow the roof off this place. I like that. I think it takes a lot of willpower to be able to, kind of hone in on that. So it's a big deal because so many people have bought in. I am also one of those people. I would be thrilled for a postseason push this year, but I don't want that if that means they fall off next season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all about building back up. Hence the term rebuild. So.
Right, and Sean Walker was a guy that very much was a cap dump, and he turned out to be super effective for them. They had no clue what they were getting in him. I'm not sure they even exactly were looking to acquire him. Obviously, the Kings were trying to get rid of Cap, and that was able to facilitate the trade for Ivan, the 3-team trade for Ivan Provorov.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think they need to cash in on Sean Walker, without a doubt. If anything, maybe it changes how they view Sealer and Stahl, because they do need defensemen, period. They need bodies. If Drysdale is to miss time and if Ristolainen is still to miss time. But I don't think it should change, Brooke, how they view Sean Walker. I think they still need to listen hard on him and make sure they make a move if they get a good one. And they very much could. But Brooke, another thing that really looks concerning, health aside, is that schedule. You were looking at that schedule today.
I was panicking.
You couldn't stop looking at that schedule today, Brooke.
Yeah, you literally yelled at me to stop.
I did. Why does this schedule concern you so much?
March is going to be terrible.
It's a brutal month.
March is genuinely going to be, and I feel like this whole season, for the most part, has just been, okay, like the Flyers pushing through and proving people wrong left and right and playing against top teams, and you win a game against the Panthers and you go toe to toe and you sweep Vancouver and you have a great game against the Rangers, and now it's like, hey, here is every single Atlantic team that you have not played in a 3-week span.
Yeah.
It is terrifying, Jordan. Do you have the schedule up?
Well, so I have that 10 of their next 14 games are against teams currently holding a playoff spot. 2 against Boston, 2 against Florida, 2 against Toronto, 2 against Tampa, and then 1 against the Rangers, 1 against Carolina.
Oh,
that's
my
the
God.
Next 14 games. That's basically like, what, a 2-3 week span?
That's a lot.
That's a crazy
You want to talk
schedule.
about a gauntlet?
Yeah.
That is...
So it's going to be challenging. I think that's
scary.
That's why, Brooke, it was weird. We were talking about how they got that West, we got all the crazy West Coast and Western Canada games out of the way. All the tough West teams, and they picked up some headline grabbing wins, but then it's almost like, you forgot they still had the top 4 Atlantic teams to go that are really good,
and they're teams that the Flyers just haven't been known to be that good against in previous years. 2 against Tampa Bay, that scares me. 2 against Toronto,
scary,
terrifying. I am still relieved that they snuck a single point against the last matchup against Toronto. You got 2 more coming up. You have the Canes sneak in there as well. You have Florida twice, which, I mean, like, Jordan, like, this is a lot. This is a lot. And then you look toward the end of the season, and the 2 of the 3 last games are against the Rangers and the Devils. And, the Rangers might be clearly set on their way at that point. But that April 13th game against Philly and Jersey is going to mean something at this rate. You look at the Metropolitan standings, it's going to be anyone's game until April, really. And the Flyers need to find a way to get through this absurdly ridiculous stretch of games that who signed off on that? I just want to talk to them.
They will be tested. I think if they make the playoffs, and they still have a very good chance to do so, but the schedule without a doubt is a gauntlet. But if they make the playoffs, I don't think anyone can say they didn't earn it or deserve it, because they're going to have to win some games against top teams.
Oh yeah.
And Brooke, I think maybe the silver lining to it all is if they fold down the stretch, or if they don't, this is good experience. I do think it will be very good experience for some of these younger players that have not played in the playoff race, that have not played in the playoffs, to play in games like this. They'll learn from it, good or bad. That's a positive. But this is a brutal stretch.
And I'm not saying it's impossible.
No.
Not by any means. We were
tough.
just talking about they've gone toe to toe with some of the top teams in the league. But it's a lot, because it's not, games sandwiched between like, hey, we're going to Columbus and we're playing the Habs, and San Jose luckily is snuck in there.
They're in there. They're one of the games that turn out to be a must-win, probably.
I was
given
say,
how tough it is.
It's a great redemption game for how they were when they were in San Jose, but it is back to back to back to back to back to back to back, Jordan. It's really nerve-wracking. Like, I sat there at my desk with my hands on my head looking at this schedule for at least 10 minutes.
You kept saying, I think you kept saying, this is bad, Jordan Hall.
This is bad, Jordan Hall.
I was like, yeah, it's a tough schedule.
It's really, and it's not red flag concerning, freaking out, but it's also, I just feel like maybe everyone underplayed the severity of what March is going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going into the season and you're looking at March, it's like, hey, cool, you have some really great top teams coming into Philly to play the Flyers. Like, great, we get to watch some good hockey. No, every single game, like, they're going to have to treat every game until the end of the season like a playoff game. 15, they really are.
Yeah, 15 games in a month is a lot, but the quality of the teams that they're playing is daunting.
They have a very nice home back-to-back of the Bruins and the Panthers.
Jeez.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
Jordan.
Tough schedule.
Oh my gosh.
And the crazy thing is the Flyers actually have given themselves some cushion. That's what's like wild, is like they're actually still in a good spot.
Mm-hmm.
But it is scary if you're a Flyers fan because some other teams have games in hand, and then you just look at the schedule and it's going to be really tough matchup after tough matchup. But the Flyers, I think if they can continue to pick up a win here and there and just continue to build that cushion a little bit.
Stay afloat.
Yeah, because the teams behind them, Brooke, have just been so crazy inconsistent. I mean, Devils are so up and down. I think there's a lot of pressure on their head coach right now in that market. The Penguins, I think everyone has doubted if this core still has it, and if Carlson and Letang and those guys can still push them on the back end.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Penguins just never die.
But they don't.
It is what it is.
And they have a really good goal differential. I think they're like a plus
15.
Plus 15. Like, yep, spot on, Brooke. Plus 15, and they have 4 games in hand on the Flyers, and some other teams. So we'll see where it all goes. It's going to be fun. The fun thing, Brooke, is the
I'm
games.
Nervous.
The games will be really fun to look forward to because there's no let up. There's no cupcakes on the schedule aside from a couple. And I mean, if we even looked earlier in the year when they lost to the Sharks, you can't even overlook any team.
Mm-hmm.
So tough schedule, Brooke.
Here we go.
Fun games to evaluate. We'll look at it all here on the Flyers Talk podcast. But a ton of topics today, Brooke. I just showed you this season's getting more and more heated and interesting.
But I would love to be having these conversations than looking at the draft.
Yes.
So it's a win.
Looking at lottery odds really is not all that enjoyable over the final month plus.
Right. Not in February.
So we got some fun topics, and we're going to continue to hit on all of them. Brooke, thank you so much. Great to see you. Great to chat with you. We are in our NBC Sports Philadelphia content room. Great to be here. A big thank you to Ben Berry, our podcast producer and guru. And of course, Flyers fans, as always, thank you so much for listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, please rate and listen. And we can't wait to talk to you next time.